Just in, another WNBA controversy has exploded after racist messages. Caitlin Clark and Chelsea Gray collided in a debate that is now much bigger than basketball. Something bigger than one game is happening around the WNBA, and Caitlin Clark is right at the center of it. This is no longer just about hard fouls. It is no longer just about jealous veterans, and it is no longer just about one bad social media post. What is happening now is a collision between the league the WNBA used to be and the league it is becoming. Then Caitlin Clark arrived. Ratings exploded, ticket sales surged, national attention followed almost overnight. The problem is attention does not arrive in perfect form. It arrives messy, it arrives loud, it arrives with new fans, casual fans, critical fans, loyal fans, and yes, sometimes toxic fans too. And that is where the real tension begins. Because some people inside the WNBA wanted the growth, but not everything that comes with growth. That is what this whole controversy is really about. Not just Caitlin Clark herself, but what her rise has exposed inside the league. For years, the WNBA operated with a smaller, more niche audience than it has today. The players knew each other, the fan base was more niche, the audience was smaller but more ideologically familiar. There was less money, less noise, less attention. That world had its own challenges, but it also had one major advantage. It was easier to control the environment. Then Clark entered the league, and the amount of public attention changed dramatically. Suddenly, Indiana Fever games were drawing massive crowds. TV numbers jumped. Merchandise sales exploded. Media rights became much bigger business, and now the WNBA is trying to figure out how to live in the world it said it wanted. That is what makes this moment so revealing, because when some veteran players talk about needing a larger conversation around the fan behavior surrounding Clark, the conversation is not really just about one screenshot or one ugly DM. It is about the fear that the league is changing in ways they cannot control. Now, let's be clear. Racist messages are unacceptable. Threats are unacceptable. Hate speech is unacceptable. That part should not even be controversial. If a player receives racist abuse online, that is wrong, full stop. But the problem is that once legitimate hate gets mixed together with regular basketball criticism, the whole conversation gets messy very fast, because those are not the same thing. If someone sends a racial slur, that is abuse. If someone says a player had a bad game, that is sports criticism. If someone says a point guard is struggling, that is part of professional sports. If someone threatens a player or their family, that crosses a line completely. Those categories matter, and one reason this conversation keeps getting uglier is because too many people are blurring them together. That is where fans get frustrated, because they feel like some players want all criticism to be treated like abuse, and if that becomes the standard, then professional sports stop being professional sports. That is a big part of what is happening here. The league now faces a challenge: how to balance rapid growth with maintaining the culture and values it wants to promote. And right now it is trying to be both. That is very hard to sustain, because mainstream sports are not tidy. NBA players get booed, NFL quarterbacks get ripped apart, superstars in every league get mocked, praised, blamed, celebrated, and attacked all at once. That does not make the worst behavior okay, but it does mean you cannot build a major sports business while expecting only clean, respectful, ideologically aligned attention. That is fantasy, and that is exactly why Caitlin Clark has become such a pressure point, because she did not just bring more fans, she brought a different kind of fan ecosystem. Casual viewers, college fans, people who do not care about WNBA politics, people who only know one or two players, people who are showing up for basketball first, not because they already bought into the culture of the league. That changes everything, and not everyone inside the WNBA is comfortable with that. That discomfort is what keeps surfacing in these controversies, not always directly, not always honestly, but it is there. And when Chelsea Gray posted a racist message after the Fever game, that became another flashpoint. Again, the message itself was wrong. No serious person should defend that. But people also noticed the timing, because by her own admission, those messages were not new. She had seen things before. She had dealt with things before. So why post that one then? Why right after losing to Indiana? Why in that moment? That is where the suspicion starts. Because fans are not just reacting to the existence of the abuse. They are reacting to how the abuse is being framed in the bigger public story. And to many people, it feels like some veteran players are using the ugliest parts of the new attention to discredit the entire wave of attention itself. That is where Clark ends up in an impossible spot, because she did not create those bad actors. She did not tell anyone to harass anybody. She has not gone out there encouraging abuse, division, or online pile-ons. And yet, because her popularity brought in millions of new eyes, she now gets treated by some people like she is somehow responsible for every ugly comment made by any fan who likes watching her play. That is absurd. No athlete in any major sport is expected to personally police an entire fan base. LeBron James cannot control Lakers fans. Patrick Mahomes cannot control Chiefs fans. Steph Curry cannot control Warriors fans. And Caitlin Clark cannot control millions of people who tune in to watch her. That expectation is unfair. And it is one of the clearest signs that the WNBA still does not fully know how to handle the scale of the moment it is in. Because this is what real mainstream attention feels like. It is not always not flattering. It is not always ideologically convenient. It is not always emotionally safe. It is messy. And the WNBA now has to decide whether it actually wants to operate inside that reality. That is the larger split inside the league. One vision says the WNBA should remain a values-first space, where activism, identity, and cultural cohesion matter just as much as basketball itself. The other vision says the WNBA should become a fully mainstream sports league first, with a broad audience, big money, and the kind of public scrutiny that always comes with scale. The truth is, both of those visions have real appeal, and both come with trade-offs. The first model protects identity and culture better, but it limits scale. The second model builds business and relevance faster, but it brings in more conflict, more criticism, and more people who do not always align with the league's culture. For years, the WNBA lived mostly in the first model. Caitlin Clark forced the second one into the room. That is why the temperature feels so high around her all the time. She did not just become a star, she became the symbol of a transition the league was not fully ready to manage, and that is why every argument around her feels bigger than the play itself. A foul becomes a philosophy debate, a technical becomes a culture war debate, a bad postgame becomes a league identity debate. That is not normal star treatment. That is what happens when a player becomes the pressure valve for a league-wide identity crisis. And if you look at it from that angle, all of this starts to make more sense. Why some players seem irritated even when they are trying to sound reasonable. Why Clark keeps becoming the center of conversation she did not start. Why veteran frustration keeps leaking into broader arguments about history, fairness, and respect. Why the league looks caught between protecting its old culture and embracing its new opportunity. This is not really about one all-star weekend confrontation. It is not really about one Instagram screenshot. It is not really about one player needing to say the right thing at the right time. It is about the WNBA realizing that growth changes power. It changes who gets centered. It changes who gets covered. It changes what the league has to tolerate. It changes what the league can no longer control. And that is uncomfortable for people who spent years building an entirely different version of this league. That discomfort is understandable. But it does not change the reality. The reality is that Caitlin Clark's arrival coincided with record ratings, sold-out arenas, increased ticket demand, and unprecedented media attention. Whether she is the sole reason or the biggest factor, the league has clearly entered a new era. The league is already in a new era. The only question now is whether it is willing to adapt to that era honestly. Because trying to shame the new audience out of existence is not going to work. Trying to make Caitlin Clark responsible for all of it is not going to work. Trying to pretend that growth can come without noise is not going to work. The genie is out. The WNBA now faces an important challenge. How to protect players from genuine abuse while recognizing that criticism is also part of professional sports. Caitlin Clark didn't create that challenge, but her popularity has made it impossible to ignore. How the league responds will shape its future.